on one hand is great when it comes to the fact that people within your party and within parliament and within the system can hold you accountable for leadership. You can't sit pretty when it comes to those kinds of leadership, parliamentary system of leadership, because as a prime minister, you're not elected directly by the people for most of the time. You're elected by, the leadership of your party. The popular vote gets you the majority seats in parliament. And then if you're the leader, for instance, the Conservative Party, if they win an election, Nigerian election, naturally, Kemi Badenoch will take leadership. So there are pros and cons. Some people say it's beginning to be worrisome, the way they churn out new prime ministers every now and then. Liz Truss, I think, was the shortest. I think she was about 2 months or barely 2 months or so. Keir Starmer is the shortest for a while. He will be one of the shortest serving Labour leaders who have been prime minister. There were other people that served. So when I'm talking about the pros and the cons, my pro on this is the fact that as the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, whichever party you belong to, you cannot just sit pretty and do whatever you like. From immigration policy to how the war in Iran is managed, to how policies within the government in the United Kingdom is managed, to the cost of living crisis, to the housing crisis, all of it, both the political end and the one that has to do with governance, impacts your leadership. And when your party is no longer satisfied, the parliament is no longer satisfied, they begin to push you out of seat. But for us, if you like, be the most woeful performer, nobody cares until the 4 years is over, because unfortunately, we do not have parliament in Nigeria. Greatest respect, because I have people I respect in parliament. So let's not look at we're running down. We don't have enough. For instance, I don't know what President Bola Tinubu will do today that will be outrageous and make the policy literally say President Tinubu should resign. I don't see that happening. So this is where I like that's their system. But on the other hand, political stability when it comes to Africa, if this happens, I don't know how it will play out because of our ethnic or religious affiliations. Bukola.
Well, a bit more than that, Jeffrey, also because of our strongman politics where, there's praise singers everywhere, at the National Assembly, the cabinet, even at the party level, where there's a lot of fear for the manning power, and there is very little demand for accountability. There's very little truth coming from, the arm of government that is supposed to be, placing a demand through the all-important checks and balances required for the thriving of our own type of democracy, which is the presidential system of government, especially, what is needed for true federalism. But some will say that our own federalism is pseudo, with all of the elements are required for it to reflect and ensure the equitable distribution of resources, not necessarily there in what a federalism should be like. And that's why what's playing out in the United Kingdom is interesting. And if you look a bit close at what's happening even within the Labour Party, there is a groundswell of support for Burnham, I believe that's his name, Andrew Burnham, who has won the Makerfield election. And some would say, what exactly would he be doing differently? Because it's going to be implementing the same Labour Party manifesto as well. But Keir Starmer has lost confidence of the electorate, especially in the council polls that were conducted earlier on. And, the people in particularly Makersfield now, I don't know if it's across the United Kingdom in all other constituencies, they are, gunning for Burnham to replace, Keir Starmer, who many agree, by the way, has been a gentleman, has stood ground, but they say that there hasn't been, a strong resolve, in government lately under his watch. And so there isn't a need for division within the Labour Party, which the Labour Party cannot afford. So they would rather that a good man steps down. And that, goes to show the beauty of a democracy where, if the electorate are dissatisfied for whatever reason, it doesn't take long before, what Jeffrey, former Prime Minister Gordon Brown, I believe, called the herd mentality at Westminster. And so when there is any slight pressure from within cabinet for a Prime Minister to step down, everyone goes with it, and that's why we saw that series of resignations that greeted the demand for him to go. And he's been a gentleman, and he's taking exit in a gentleman way. But if Andrew Burnham is now the next Prime Minister and Labour doesn't still satisfy the United Kingdom's electorate, then I'm interested in knowing what exactly would play out within government and with the United Kingdom people.
So it's both politics and governance that affected the state and the fate of Keir Starmer. For instance, I'm going to hear from him in a moment. So the council polls that happened, over 1,000 council seats, significant loss for the Labour Party, who won a significant majority in the last election that brought in Keir Starmer himself against Rishi Sunak. What I like about what plays out when it comes to the electorate. So how did Labour come? Rishi Sunak and the Conservative lost significant seats. Landslide, they hit them in the last parliamentary elections that brought in Keir Starmer. Now, council elections, they are beginning to see that maybe Reform UK by Nigel Farage is beginning to build the momentum and speaking the language of the people. So the people went for who they liked, and they said, look, Keir, I don't think you can lead us into the future or want. So the beauty of what I see here is people's power. Our democracy in Nigeria will not work until people feel they have the power to elect or remove. Not this one that people don't want to come out because they feel that the politicians have made up their mind. That's why the politicians sit pretty. Some of them, I can tell you, don't have okay, let me not go too far. Their capacity to lead is highly in doubt, highly in doubt. But somehow, they win election, they even get re-elected. I mean, across levels. But let's take a listen to Keir Starmer.
The question my party is asking now is whether I am best placed to lead us into the next general election. I have heard the answer of my parliamentary party to that question, and I accept that answer with good grace. Every decision I've taken has been about putting the country I love first. That is why I will resign as leader of the Labour Party. I have spoken to His Majesty the King this morning to inform him of my decision. I will ask the National Executive Committee of the Labour Party to set out a timetable with nominations opening on the 9th of July and completed by the summer recess. In the case of a contest, this will ensure a new leader is in place before Parliament returns in September. I will remain in post as Prime Minister until the contest is complete.
I swear by Almighty God that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles, his heirs and successors, according to law. So help me God.
Well, you heard the Prime Minister, outgoing Prime Minister there, Sir Keir Starmer, saying he did his best, but now he's going to stay on until, there's a change sometime in July, resigning on his own, and then he'll, focus on family. And, it can only, there's nothing else that can be more statesmanly than that, and that's an example that is not very common in this part of the world that we would like to see. Governance is not a do or die affair, and of course we've seen Burnham also there taking the oath as he resumes. But Jeffrey.
Interesting time. So we're going to be watching, of course, this impacts geopolitics. The UK, for instance, is part of the G7. So all of this impacts how the world perceives the geopolitical element. But this is more of an internal issue. For instance, the Labour Party has said they are not drilling the North Sea. Conservatives say go drill because our dependence on energy, because they are doing net zero. They are looking for a way to be more friendly with the environment and all those environmental friendly policies. I think even the king himself is in support of that. But Conservative Party saying no. When all the shocks happened in Iran and all these places, here it affects us. So what are we keeping it for? But from here, let's take a look at what another protest, as we understand, happened.
Interesting developments at home. Yes, protesters in Oyo blocked vehicular movement yesterday as they demanded the unconditional release of those children who have now been in captivity for about a month. Recall that they were kidnapped from their schools on May the 24th, and they asked that the Oyo state government, act speedily. Many of them bearing placards with different inscriptions, and it's only trite. We wonder what the family members are going through right now, the agony, and day and night. Remember, we're in the rainy season, so what would be the plight, the condition of those children and their teachers in the forest areas of Oyo, I believe, as there are reports that security agents have now surrounded the area where those terrorists are and have prevented an escape. But the people of Oyo are demanding the unconditional release of those children and their teachers who are in very, very deplorable conditions right now. Our hearts remain with them, and of course with families of the victims.
As a matter of fact, we hope this is done and sorted as quickly as possible. I'm sure that a lot is being done in terms of the security agencies trying to do their work to get these people out. But of course, the citizens, all we want is to see these kids, especially the children, come out. We saw the headline yesterday. I've forgotten the Daily Al-Qaeda headline that said the military, I think, has more like, I don't know the professional word they use now, more like created a perimeter where those perpetrators, the perpetrators of this abduction cannot go beyond. So let me use the common word I'm familiar with, encircle them. But it's very complicated. That's why we say it should never have happened in the first place. That is because as soon as they get these people, it becomes very complicated because they'll use them as human shield. And if you go gun blazing, there's going to be casualty. Children will be killed, people will die, civilians will have no business dying. So it becomes very, very, very difficult. The issue of mass abduction is also a big question, which I've always raised. And Kayode raised that question at that time. Why is our country such a place where these things happen easily? Now, we commend the security agencies for the things they do, because sometimes I know that the things they prevent may be more than the things that happen. But when it happens, and it happens like this, at this scale, it's very embarrassing to all of us. So the people will continue to put the pressure. It's within their right to put this pressure. We will continue to put the pressure on security agencies to say, do your best to get these guys out. But right now, I think it's a very delicate situation that we need to just keep watching and seeing. But nothing must happen to these children. Whatever political will that has to be mustered to get this done has to be done as quickly as possible. Because I've said it over and over again, that part of the problem is the politics itself that mush up some of these things that happen. I don't want to go into all the details, but more importantly for all of us is that this kid must be released. I'm sure there are efforts to get them out, but it's a bit complicated. So my advocacy to everyone involved is let's not allow it to happen with ease like this again. Nicola?
And this happened in Iwo Road in Ibadan, by the way, yesterday. We commend the citizens for not being quiet. This is about the second or the third round of protests that we've seen.
Like the third.
Yes, we saw one happen in Ibadan also some weeks ago. We saw another take place in Abeokuta, the Ogun State capital. So this is about the third round of protests. And this is, what we call the civic engagement, active and vibrant, engagement online and on-site. It shouldn't just be online. And so we encourage the people not to keep quiet, to keep putting pressure on government. And we want to see the same resolve, the same anger that trailed the killing of the general, former spokesperson of Defense Headquarters, after which we saw the rescue of his widow
wife
not long afterwards. We want to see it as a response, quick response to the rescue of these children who have been in captivity for about a month, and indeed for others. So we shouldn't give breathing space to the terrorists and, pay ransoms and, embolden these demons who hold the state to ransom and turn Nigeria into a killing field. If the widow of the former general could have been rescued days after, the death of her husband, and some would say, why did, the general have to die before we saw that will, deployed to rescuing the widow? And so we require some form of, wielding of monopoly of force by the administration, such that they know, the terrorists they get the message that Nigeria cannot be a breeding ground for them to attack, for them to, kidnap, and for them to make illegal wealth off of the souls and comfort of Nigeria.
Bukola, for me, I would like the president to say what Governor Pablo said. In fact, if I have my way, let them close down this whole Operation Safe Corridor. That is personal. I don't want to hear it. Safe corridor at this point when this evil, I'm trying to manage my words, this madness by these perpetrators is happening. Just close down this.
I've heard the Minister of Defense say that international rules require that, when an enemy surrenders, you treat them well. But it has proven to fail. What if that rule of engagement has proven to fail time and again?
Yes, because there are two sets of people. There are ideologues among them, especially those ones. We shouldn't spare them.
Absolutely.
We shouldn't spare them at all. This Operation Safe Corridor, for now, keep it somewhere. Declare a state of emergency on the national. The security agencies know what to do when you give them that marching order. A lot of these guys, a lot of these criminals and these bandits or terrorists, as they call them, will not come back alive. They won't even have the opportunity for a justice system in an emergency situation, given what we're dealing with, to serve as deterrent. But I know we operate a democracy. So naturally, if they surrender, you can't just take them out. You have to bring them to the court process, find them guilty, and either sentence them to death or sentence them to life in prison, depending on what charges is presented.
Indeed, it's that rehabilitation that has a huge question mark on it, because that's proven to fail time and again, because these former terrorists often go back to their old ways when they are unable to, apply themselves into society through that reintegration process and, earn in a way of integrity. They often return to their old ways. We've seen that happen time and again in Nigeria's northwest. And so the administration must review this Operation Safe Corridor that sees the reported rehabilitation of former terrorists. We're talking about people who have been responsible for the death, for the agony of many Nigerians and Nigerian families. And so there must be a review of that particular program, non-kinetic measure, as they say, in the fight against banditry and insurgency.
I just wish that when these children and their teachers are released, the president will come gun blazing. So going forward, Operation Safe Corridor, because he said it in his speech. He said that window is not in perpetuity. So that means he gave us a clue that this is not eternal Operation Safe Corridor. So I'm happy with that. I just feel that as soon as these children are released, the president comes out to say, remember I said it in my speech on June 12th, now I'm saying no more Safe Corridor. If we get you, you will be neutralized. If you are able to escape, well, the justice system will find its course on you. And then just to deter this madness that is going on in our country. But
it's a good time to remind the president.
Yes, I understand it's 40 days now.
That position should be reviewed.
So, Mr. President, because I know that the security agencies know what to do when this, Governor Puebla has said his own as well. He doesn't have a certain control. The control he has, he said, I will sign their death warrant. Not just that, I will make sure they take them to Ring Road, if you know Benin, and that's where they'll be executed, just like they used to do in Babi. Because these guys don't understand mad language. They are not interested. They get you, they take you out. How can you cut off somebody's head? And for what? What did the guy do? He just went to school. So we will not give them the opportunity to breed. The sovereignty of our country must supersede so that we show them that we have the monopoly of knowledge, monopoly of violence. So everybody has to be responsible on this one. But we'll take a break. When we come back, we'll bring you what the papers are saying.
And time now to dive into what the papers are saying this morning. And of course, it's a potpourri of some of the big stories from the last 24 hours. And joining us now is our public affairs analyst and MD of Megastar Magazine, Mr. Ifetayo Adeni, who joins us virtually. Mr. Adeni, it's good to see you again.
Yeah, good morning. Good to see you.
Yes, indeed, it's been a while. Let's begin with the Vanguard newspaper now, which has, quite a number of stories from the last 24 hours. But take a look at the big story. This is, taking off from where we stopped just before the break. 22 dead, many injured in Plateau attack. Protests rock Ibadan. Well, that's a recap of some of the security stories. Let's just look at a few of the riders here. Health workers, security personnel among those killed. I believe that's in Plateau State. Panic in Owo as gunmen abduct mother, 2 kids, attack pastor's home in twin raids. Protests lock down major streets in Ibadan over kidnapping. Security's national duty, not ethnic battle. That's ascribed to, of course, the Yoruba Nation activist Igboho Sunday Adeyemo, of course, who has been in the news as well in the last 48 hours. There's more, from a recap of the insecurity situation in the last 24 hours. But, Mr. Ifetayo, I want you to just go through all of these, starting with, another reported round of deaths in Plateau State. Well, there had been promise of, the installation of CCTV cameras that we're yet to see, according to reports, is somewhat mired in procurement. And of course, going to Oyo State, where the people are coming out to demand the unconditional and immediate release of these people. What are your thoughts on the approach, to tackling insecurity in the different parts of the country in recent times? Are we making progress, or the losses are overshadowing the gains? How do you see it?
Yeah, for me, the losses are overshadowing the gains. And secondly, you can't continue to do the same thing and expect a different result. In as much we all know all over Nigeria, whether south, north, east, or west, we are battling insecurity. And what I've expected our state executive, as they call them, or chief security officer, the governors, or what have you, is that they will have declared a state of emergency in their various states, because we know the issue of security. When there's no security, economy cannot thrive. People cannot come to invest. People cannot go about their daily life. And of course, they must send a strong warning to those who are perpetrating the evil, even their sponsor, whatever regard is. Security has nothing to do with the ethnicity or the religion that you belong to. So I think they have not done enough to curb this thing. Just like you said, in Plateau State, they have promised us time without number. I'm going to relocate. We are going to put the military force and all of that. There has not been any concrete thing that they have been done to show or to assure Nigeria that the government, they are tackling the issue of security. My heart goes to the family and the people in Plateau that lost their life. There's nothing that can be compared with a life. Of course, people who are protesting just to say that we can't just sit down and tell us you are doing something. In as much you don't want to reveal much of the master plan, I think at this time around, I expect the government to come out and say, we have done this is what we have gained. But if you have not declared state of emergency, you are still rubbing them on the face. I also, just to borrow a line from what Jeff said, that I know that our security agency, they know what they do. If they can give them free hand to operate, they will go after them. It's like an eye for an eye, so that it will send a strong warning. But now it has become like a venture on its own. I just hope that they will do something in time. They will declare state of emergency when it comes to the security issue. So for me, government, they still need to sit up, and I think this is one of the things that we form or that we shape 2027 election debate because the security of life and property is number one priority of any government.
Okay, so let's go to the other papers. Let's go to the Abuja Inquirer. It leads with something totally different. FCT new council chairman face labor disputes. Infrastructure wars, resident demand, visible results. So if I read a few lines from that, FCT minister has put the 6 newly sworn-in area council chairmen on notice over salary disputes, labor unrest, and poor grassroots governance as residents across the council demand visible infrastructure, accusing their predecessors of poor delivery with the FCT administration shouldering council's development needs. So the first question will be, their monies, does it get to them? If their monies get to them, so why are they not doing the work? Mr. Fetayo.
Yes, that's what we are saying when it comes to transparency. Government still need to be transparent when it comes to dealing or allocation. And of course, I remember kudos to him. I remember while I think Adam Soshomole, Senator Adam Soshomole, while the first time he became a governor, he did something in Edo State. Like he said, yes, I'm going to release your allocation to local government, but bring out your budget. What are you planning to do? Let me see whether whatever I'm going to release to you is commemorate with what you are doing on ground. If the FCT minister feel that there's a dispute between what was released or what is not getting to them, they should bring it to book, come to the open, let's lay down the number, the figure, what is on ground. So it will remove the issue of distrust, between the labor and the council chairman, and to see, and if people are disputing that the infrastructure that is on ground does not commemorate on some areas they need to work on, since so much have been released to you, you are enjoying the autonomy, as it said in quotes, but of course, let them bring it to open. This is what we have done, this is what we are doing, and this thing needs to take so much time to be actualized. So I think everything should be brought to the open so that nobody is playing akim-panky when it comes to the taxpayers' fund, which they are using for any form of infrastructure. Well, in some area in Abuja, the FCT minister is doing a great job, and when you go to some area, you ask yourself, is this part of Federal Capital Territory? But it's just in their hand to be open and transparent.
I wonder if we should begin to review, what we mean by a good job, if it doesn't also translate into the well-being of the people, because performance is not restricted to, highbrow buildings and sprawling roads, but also, to the well-being of those who are administering those civil service and those, offices that ensure that things go smoothly. And so that's also another important part of the conversation. But let's head to the Guardian newspapers this morning, Mr. Fetayo. There's a very compelling front page for everyone elected and appointed, and of course, the followers. Spike in bus fares, rents force Nigerians to live in cars, offices, shops. And you see there, Lagos apartment, 2.5 million naira. The illustration also captures, the vivid imagery of a downfall bus, a petrol station where petrol price is 1,200 naira and 30 naira per liter. And you see there, a thing speaks for itself, as they say. Mr. Fetayo, is this an exaggeration of what the situation is? Or perhaps if we looked a bit closer at the story, which by the way is on page 6, you would see what is the stark reality of Nigerians. Sometimes maybe we're in our own comfort zones and we don't know what others are experiencing. How do you weigh in on this story?
Yes, first and foremost, there's nothing being exaggerated here. Is what we are facing or hearing on a daily life. Even if you are in your comfort zone, you have family, you have extended family, you have friends whom you talk to, you have colleagues, and all of that. Just like I said, I think government still needs to do something, especially when it comes to the fare, when it comes to bus, transportation. For example, I think from the beginning of this year, like I sat down with some of my team and said, okay, let's do, some of you come 3 times in a day. Offices, organization too, they still
Recording
need to
in progress.
come in. They still also need to come in place and make sure that they give their people a kind of soft landing. If they come 5 times in a week, you can take 1 day off, like I introduced. I'm not just trying to say this, a meal a week, just to give them a kind of a subsidy in quote. Nigeria living in car, and I thought the Lagos State government made a law one time, I think through Governor Babatunde Fashola, that rentage should be 1 year, but you notice that the government does not have a control of that. There's no price control. Landlords or
Recording
developer,
stopped.
they just charge. Of course, the downfall driver, the transportation system, anytime there's rain or there's traffic, they just call whatever price. Of course, the pump price has not been stable. I think these are the reality of life that government can step into. Provide there was a time we were hearing LNG bus, but since the price has come down a bit, we don't know anything about that again. You can roll out more just to reduce, or just to make sure that you bring a kind of succor to people who everyday life, they must go from point A to B before they can have their being, before they can have their means of a livelihood. Government is not doing much in this area, but it's just since it's facing us, I think they can step in and roll out a kind of measure so that Nigeria can live a better life. At least we deserve that.
Well, about the legislation in Lagos, we did have a conversation with the Lagos Commissioner for Housing and Urban Development just about 2 weeks ago, and I recall that he did say that the legislation is still in the works, and efforts are being made to ensure that all stakeholders are carried along to ensure that the legislation emerges as an ideal framework that is a win-win for everyone, and not just for tenants as well. So that hasn't quite come through yet. Many often
thank you.
Yeah, many often think that that particular proposal has become a law in Lagos, but it is yet to become a law. Another thing that is also important, to weigh in on is, recall that the president had, during a meeting, with progressive governors, I believe, amid the conflict in Iran, did say that he was consulting with his finance minister, but compared Nigeria with Kenya, for which he received some criticisms at the time. But nothing quite came through until the conflict was concluded, from the government as a form of, intervention to help cushion the impact of the increasing pump price of petrol back home in the country. And even as the conflict has now, been managed successfully and come to an end, the pump price of petrol has still not come down back to what it was in February.
Bukola, let me say this. You said over 2 weeks. I'm glad you make that point that it's still being worked on. Since I'm sure there's a governor, what's his name, Akinwumi Ambode, after Fashola, then our Lagos State governor, who has done about 7 years in the helms of affairs. So, are we saying that it will take us almost 12 years to enact a law, to pass a bill, to meet the stakeholder? Sometimes government, when the thing does not affect them directly, maybe because they are comfortable, they get some of these things, free housing allowance, transportation allowance, even fuel allowance and all of that. So they hardly make an effort. But these are the things that affect ordinary Nigerians. I think they should speed up whatever it is that they are doing. And of course, there's no it's not out of place if we have local government autonomous and say, in this local government, we have 12 LNG bus, that can take you from point A to point B free of charge, or 50% reduction or 60% reduction. That's how government, come to the rescue of their citizens in terms of austerity.
That's a good challenge to that particular position of government, especially because we did see, amid the conflict rather, that some governors, not very many, provided some form of relief for citizens in Kaduna State, to be precise. But let's look at another story. There's quite a lot from the Guardian newspaper this morning. I'd like you to tie the two together. And one, of course, is, a review of our outing yesterday on our sister political program, where the former president of CAN and PFN appeared. And the review is, at just under the nameplate. Don't seek re-election, Orisha Jaffer tells Tinubu. It's a page 3 read on the front page of The Guardian. And if you go right there towards the bottom plate of the paper, you'd see presidency rep dismiss calls for Tinubu's resignation over economy insecurity. What are your thoughts on this?
First and foremost, let me start from the last one. People hardly fight whatever it is they benefit from. So I won't dismiss their call. Then secondly, for former PFN candidate and Pastor Ayo Jaffer saying that Tinubu should not stick for re-election. I think it's only in this country that whenever we want to do something, we do it. We just want to make sure we want to assert ourselves. We just want to make sure we want to, sit tight on the power. You have been doing this thing. Look at what is happening in Britain, in UK, for that matter. Prime Minister, we discovered that I'm not living to the expectation of the people. By themselves, they will say they need to step down so that maybe they need fresh idea and all of that. I don't think it's only Mr. President that can do the job. I don't think it's only one man. Like the Yoruba will say that a tree does not make a forest. So if you have been failing, I think it's also our Mr. President who said that if I didn't give you light, 24 hours light, don't vote for me when I come for re-election. But those people, the followers, the party leaders who benefit from him or from his administration, whether they work for him directly or indirectly, elected or selected, they want to fight it and say, stay put there on their mandate, they will stand. But the reality that is, let's look at the number, let's look at, are we better off since we started, or is there any new thing you are going to do? So that is the issue for me. It's not just about you saying calling the president not to resign over the insecurity or economy.
Yes, indeed. A good way to wrap up the newspaper review, and hope that those reflections, ring through the heartbeat of the nation in the coming days. Mr. Ifetai Adeni is a public affairs analyst and MD Megastar Magazine. Thank you so much for coming through on this particular conversation.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
Well, we'll take a moment now. When we return, it will be time to reflect on that all-important agreement that has now been reached between the U.S. and Iran, and hopefully Lebanon, on the other hand, which was drawn into the conflict, following constant attacks by Israel on the Hezbollah group in Lebanon. What does this mean for geopolitics and, of course, for the resumption of trade through the Strait of Hormuz? Stay with us for details. We'll be right back.
Bringing our guest, Mr. Joseph Anyagolu, is a former Nigerian ambassador to Switzerland, former Nigerian representative to the United Nations. Ambassador, thank you for coming on the program.
Yeah, good morning.
Talk to us about what your interpretation of the back and forth around the war between Israel, Iran, and United Kingdom is. On one hand, they came to an agreement, a draft resolution or memorandum of understanding. That memorandum was signed, I think, on Friday, but the Straits is still not fully open, because those were some of the terms that were part of that memorandum of understanding. In fact, the other day, President Donald Trump literally lashed out on Benjamin Netanyahu, talking about the Hezbollah-Lebanon issue. Are we really making progress? Because the compounding effect is affecting all of us right here in Nigeria, given the price of PMS, the price of gas. So if it didn't affect us, maybe it wouldn't have been part of our business, but now it affects all of us one way or the other, but at different levels.
Yeah, you know, it's a complex problem because, yes, the U.S. went and attacked Iran for all sorts of reasons, and then you've got to the point where at least there is an MOU and an indication of an interest in bringing the conflict to an end. Just that it obviously has been stuck with all the part of the complexities affecting the actualization of the peace. The principle of which is the attitude of Israel to keeping the peace itself, because it's still attacking Lebanon, and that is a sticking point for Iran. Iran feels that the Hezbollah group that is all part of the group that they want to support, and so on. So, and Israel is having difficulty with really containing or accepting to let the Hezbollah do as they wish. So that is the sticking point. And unless there's enough pressure to Israel to conform with the ceasefire agreement or peace agreement, or probably pressure on Iran to not to worry about what happens to Hezbollah and the others, then we can see a difficulty in actually getting the peace to work, and that will be a sad thing to see, because that is likely to affect the opening of the Strait of Hormuz, and of course all the various impacts on global trade. One wouldn't lose hope. I think Trump is trying to put pressure on Israel and so on. He's actually sent very strong message to Netanyahu. We're hoping that it works, because it's definite that Trump himself realizes the importance of bringing this matter to a close. We're surprised that he actually agreed to an MOU or a peace agreement that included certain things that were not necessarily in U.S. interest. Especially, it wasn't part of the reason why he started the war in the first place. So that's a good approach on the part of the U.S. We'll keep watching what happens between now and probably the next couple of weeks. Of course, any day that the Strait of Hormuz is not open or accessible, it has its impact on global trade, especially the price of oil. Yeah, so that's the situation now.
Indeed, and one wonders about, what the true state of things really are, on this agreement. Because in one breath, the U.S. Vice President is saying that Iran has agreed to allow inspectors, international inspectors, come look at its nuclear program. On the other hand, Iran is saying we haven't made any, new commitments, different from what were obtained before the war. And so we hope that this does not lead to another resumption of hostilities, because the world is already stressed, in the global economy, to be precise. But let's head to another important matter, which, this time around affects more of the African continent, and it has to do with, the xenophobic attacks in South Africa. We've seen, videos come through on social media of citizens, South African citizens, giving an ultimatum to African, migrants to exit the country. We've seen some as far as handing over businesses built by Africans who are not primarily South African nationals, taking from them and hand it over to South African nationals. What are your thoughts on the role of the South African government in reining in on this? Have they done enough?
Well, frankly, I don't think they've done enough, because I've listened to the speeches of the key operators in South Africa, the president and some of them, and except perhaps the opposition leader, Julius Malema, the rest seem to still blame the Africans who are in South Africa for even being there. Now, this is, of course, it is quite saddening. Nobody would have expected that South Africa, that the whole of Africa, especially the frontline states, including Nigeria, give a lot to help them pull out their kernel from the fire, I would say, have turned around to be so violently antagonistic to Africans. It's not in the spirit of African unity, African brotherhood, which was what drove these countries to help South Africa in the first place. So one expects that the leadership in South Africa should do a lot more. It is first of all their responsibility to protect the lives and freedoms of people who are in their country, whether they are legal or illegal. But to create the impression that to create the impression that that's not their primary responsibility seems to add fuel to the problem. That's one point. And then, of course, there's a lot of mob action going on. So the message to the ordinary South African is to remember that there is the spirit of Africanness, which has guided the conduct of most other African countries towards them in the past. And that if they're worried about external influences, why is it only targeted at Africans? They're not worried about any other, even the Boers that live with them, and so on. So, but it's difficult to even educate the mob or control the mob or get them to think seriously when probably they see themselves as not getting the best of what they think they should get. But then these are the things their government should also take into consideration. There is still economic appetite going on. If they work hard at balancing the books, it's possible that a lot more Africans, that is South Africans, who have a job, and that they need to be. There's need for a lot of sensitization. That I don't want to say that South Africans are lazy, but that has been said now and then, that these foreigners, other Africans in their midst are not necessarily taking their job. They actually at times create jobs, which is actually the reality. But it's at the end of the day a very serious matter that undermines real African unity. And especially South Africa is a key member of the AU and of the African continent itself. Yeah.
Okay, let's talk. Sometimes I get a bit worried about the understanding of this whole xenophobic attack. On one hand, I'll give you an example so you can help me dimension it from your expertise as an ambassador, as a diplomat. On one hand, it looks more like Afrophobia than anything else. the South African economy looks, from what we know, is literally being controlled by the minority whites, which is like 80% of the economy, and the whites, I think, about 15 to 20% of the population. So if you go to Western Cape, that is controlled by the DA, you don't see all of this agitation that you see happening in places like KwaZulu-Natal in Durban, or you go to Johannesburg in Gauteng and all of those places, the neighborhood. They don't go to, and I challenged the gentleman, I said, where I would think that you're xenophobic, whoever is perpetrating the xenophobia is serious, go to places like Western Cape, like Cape Town. Are you saying that there are no French, Germans, Dutch, British, all of these guys in, say, Western Cape, for instance, who are undocumented? And he started talking about some marine economy and all that and all of that. So that's on one hand. Is this really xenophobia or Afrophobia? And the other hand, you mentioned it in passing as well. When, for instance, Nigerians go there, I don't think Nigerians go to get government jobs. The Nigerians who go there go to create jobs. So what jobs are they taking from South Africans? And then also speak to us about what seems like, quote and unquote, the implicit complicity of the ANC leadership. Because there's no, when you listen to Cyril Ramaphosa, there's nothing so forceful about the way he presents this case, without doubt, without necessarily undermining the need for people to protect their country. If you can, nexus all of this together for us.
Well, I have probably hinted at most of what you've said. It's not, you wouldn't say it is xenophobic because it is largely Afrophobic. They are not bothering kicking out Americans or Dutch or Europeans in their midst, who are actually evidently living much better than most of them. So it's their angst or bad feeling seems to be targeted at Africans. So that is there. And of course, you're right. I am not satisfied with what the government has done. Even the rhetoric of the president. They should be firm to say this is not right, this is not acceptable, it's a criminal offense to do this, and put out police or whatever they have in the street to call as many people that get involved in all that to order. And it's unfortunate that they are targeting even businesses of people. I've seen a lot of some of the posts deliberately going to people's businesses and taking over their businesses. Well, I would not. It's unfortunate, and the government has to even begin to think of compensation. Even the people who have lost their livelihood and investments there. These are the things that countries, African countries, Nigeria included, should forcibly demand from the South African government. We need affirmative action from the government of South Africa to really call this to order, rein in their people and use the law. They have the law that prevent such attacks. So it's a matter of implementing it. But if they treat them with kid gloves and think and carry on like though that this is okay, the fault of the migrants and so on, then the South African will continue doing what they are doing, and that's not good for the image of the country, and it's not even good for them themselves, because after some time, when they end up finish driving out the African foreigners, they might turn around against themselves. Who knows? But for us who are watching, who are actually victims, we feel very bad because it is not deserving at all, especially of countries that have actively supported and played key roles in the development, the relieving Black South Africa of the shackles of apartheid and supporting them in every way, politically, diplomatic, monetary, and so on. So that is the fact. It's a challenge for the South African government. They have to do a lot more than they are doing. And I know that a lot of African countries, Nigeria included, seem to, for now, be reluctant in a reciprocal response. But I think at a point, and if it continues, we will have to think of what to do.
And that's where
there are South African businesses in Nigeria. At least these people, whoever, the Nigerians who are coming back, having with stories of lost assets and so on, they have to be compensated out of money that we take from the South African businesses in Nigeria. I don't know. This is just my thought on it.
And that's where I'm headed. You've also touched on, what could be long-term consequences for South Africa in terms of trade and diplomatic relations. And we've seen a bit of that, when President Cyril Ramaphosa looked to Ghana for, to canvass investment for other African countries and not Nigeria. And some would say that itself is an affront, considering the history that Nigeria shares with South Africa, an affront on many levels, the treatment of its nationals in that country and the bypassing, of Nigeria in its attempt at rebuilding relations. So in that regard, really, you talked about reciprocal action, and some would say that even Nigeria could be immersed in that particular consideration because the South African businesses that are in Nigeria also have Nigerians, gainfully employed. So what should really be the ideal response to check this, humiliation, continued humiliation and mistreatment of Nigerians in South Africa?
Well, what we have, the options we have, of course, is a peaceful option, diplomacy, get the South African government to really see that what is happening is wrong and get their people to understand that what is happening is wrong. It's not even in their own interest. Get them either to understand why and comport themselves or to be made to comport themselves, especially with regard to foreigners. So that is one of the options. The option is, of course, there's other options after some time, and we keep hearing about bad treatment, loss of time, loss of life, definitely loss of assets. We will probably decide that it's a possibility that we would consider reciprocal actions. And well, you seem to think that because Nigerians are in some of the South African businesses here, yes, fine. We don't want to do that. It's not one of the best immediate options we want to take because of that. But then, even then, you can nationalize. You can nationalize their assets here. Use that in paying, compensating the Nigerians who are coming back from there, having lost all that they invested in South Africa. These are possibilities. Right. It's a situation that shouldn't have happened. Okay. But the reality is that it is happening, and all right. There are many things you could think of, but which you are not really, because we are African, ready to do easily.
Okay. Ambassador, thank you so much. We had a conversation with a gentleman. He said he was a Pan-Africanist, but when we engaged him, his Pan-Africanism, I began to be in doubts in my head. So there are deeper issues that may be a bit more cultural and historical gaps that are playing out in South Africa. Some have even said the people at the vanguard have inherited what they can get. The younger ones are wondering what they've got from this whole end of apartheid. Ambassador Joseph Ayalogu is a former Nigerian ambassador to Switzerland and former Nigerian representative to the United Nations. Thank you, sir, for coming on the program, sir.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for inviting me.
Yeah, Bukola.
And let's get to this next one, which also has a pretty much, global, or if you like, international perspective. Nigeria's relations with the European Union is both historical, economic, and has come with a lot of benefits. It's multifaceted, covering energy, the digital economy, transportation. And in the last couple of months, it has only strengthened. And so let's find out the progress that we have made so far as the ambassador of the European Union to Nigeria, Ambassador Gautier Mignon, joins us virtually on the program this morning. Good morning, Ambassador. It's good to have you. Well, you join us from our Abuja studio. Good morning, Ambassador Gautier Mignon.
Good morning to you and your audience. Greetings from Abuja.
Yes, greetings from here as well. So let's begin this way. Nigeria is often described as one of the EU's most important partners in Africa. What makes Nigeria so strategically important to the European Union?
Well, West Africa, as a neighboring region for the EU, is a strategic region for us. And Nigeria, as the most populous country in the region, the biggest economy, and a country at the crossroad between West Africa and Central Africa, is the cornerstone of it. So, as they say in the banking sector, Nigeria is too big to fail. And if you look at a more positive side, if Nigeria does well, it will have a ripple effect and a training effect on the rest of the sub-region. So that's why Nigeria is such an important partner for us.
And so the Nigeria-EU partnership has evolved over the past decade considerably. How would you characterize that partnership today? Well,
it's a very rich and solid partnership, a long-standing one. We are like-minded on many issues. I would say our world visions are quite similar, defending multilateralism, international cooperation in good faith, respect for international law. And in terms of bilateral relationship, we have evolved from a donor-recipient relationship towards a partnership among equals, where we are trying to, on our side, align on the strategies of the federal government, the state governments, and also to unlock more investment in the country and reinforce value chains, manufacturing capacities within Nigeria. And it's a partnership which now is under what we call the Global Gateway Strategy, which is precisely about this, mobilizing more private resources, because we know that only with development, if we use only development, official development assistance, we will not be able to reach the sustainable development goals. We need much more money from that, and for this we need to mobilize domestic funds and international funds from the private sector.
So talk to us about where we are. Is this a question of perception or reality when it looks like Africa used to be seen, or is being seen sometimes as a charity case based on the relationship? So have we evolved from the point of being seen as a charity case, so we look at development from the point of assistance rather than from the point of mutual economic interest? Where are we right now, or is it just a perception that we've walked over without knowing?
No, it's really about mutual interest, economic and also geopolitical. And this was also the message conveyed by the latest EU-AU summit, which took place in Angola at the end of last year. And it's important to remind that the EU remains by far the largest investor in Africa and in Nigeria in particular. We have more than 300 billion euros of investment in the whole of Africa, whereas the US or China have around 50 billion each. And in Nigeria, we're also probably the first provider of foreign direct investment. About 1/3 of the existing FDI in Nigeria comes from the EU. But we want to go beyond this. There is still an untapped potential that we want to exploit. And so now, under the Global Gateway Strategy, this is what we are trying to do, to leverage investment, facilitate investment, accelerate investment, but we still also support sectors like rule of law, democracy, education. Also, we come up with security, of course. Also, we come up with still with humanitarian aid. But these are also seen as enabling areas to facilitate business, to create a more conducive environment for business, because all this is linked. If you now have a good level of education, a good level of security in a country like Nigeria, well, you will be limited in terms of what you can do about investment. So it's a global approach. This is why it's called a global gateway. And it covers all these sectors, but really with this new mindset of a partnership between equals.
So let's build, I know you've mentioned it, but I want to double down on a few angles. So this particular question about investment. So we look at what are the most and vital part of opportunities that you're seeing in Nigeria? I'm talking about European Union now, that say in the next 3 to 4 to 5 years, you really want to aggregate as much capital as possible for the country. So I'm looking at our capital importation, the last one released by the MBS, showing that we have a lot of FPI that are the big component of that capital importation. FDI was maybe less than, a very small percent in millions of dollars, while the entirety of the capital importation was about $10 billion. So that tells you the kinds of money. In fact, somebody analyzed it to say, people are more interested in borrowing Nigerian money than putting money in Nigeria based on that available data. So if you were to talk about precisely the areas of investment that the EU is looking at to aggregate as much capital as possible, what are those areas? And is there a timeline?
Mm-hmm. First, I think you're very right to stress that there is still much to do to increase foreign direct investment in Nigeria. I think the reforms that have been led under the Renewed Hope agenda have created a more conducive environment, but there's still a lot to do. And in terms of priority areas, we see digital economy, we see green economy, like climate smart agriculture, like renewable energy. We see transport, infrastructure, and we see also the health sector, manufacturing of pharmaceuticals and other medical equipments. These are our priority sectors under the Global Gateway, in addition to the enabling area that I mentioned before.
And so you talked about how this relationship has evolved from donor-recipient to one of equal partnership. I'd like us to explore that with an eye on Nigeria's gains on the basis of equal partnership from this relationship. And I ask because we've seen, some of the strides of the European Union in Nigeria. We've seen the, investment in Lagos water transportation, the Omi Eco project. We've seen, the construction of a water project somewhere in Benue State to assist and liberate internally displaced persons. That also, I believe, is a product of the global investment strategy or of the African Investment, European Investment Bank in Nigeria. You can, provide clarification on that. But what are the elements of Nigeria's strides in this partnership to show that indeed it's an equal partnership, not just one of, receiving in aid, in assistance through projects in the country?
Because what we want to support, in fact, are partnerships between European companies and Nigerian companies, and we want to support the development of local capacities, value chains in the country. And in particular, we target women and youth as priority beneficiaries in all our projects. So it's really about having a transformative effect. And it's not only making money, in Nigeria. Of course, we care for the interests of our companies also, but it goes beyond that. We want to have an impact on the sustainable development of Nigeria. And again, with also, I think, the humility to recognize that we are not in charge. Nigerians are in charge, and it's not our project that will be a game changer. It will be the policies and the energy of Nigerian stakeholders that we can support, accelerate with our projects. And I think that's also a change of approach. Now, thank you for mentioning some of the concrete examples of what we are doing currently. I think the OmiEco project, indeed, is one of our main flagship projects under the Global Gateway in Nigeria. 410 million euros of investment, mostly from the EU, the European Investment Bank, and France, to develop a network of waterway transportation with 75 electric ferries across the Lagos Lagoon over the next year. This is the kind of action that are not only good to facilitate displacement in the city, but also to reduce the carbon footprint of the city, and also connect isolated communities, and finally transform the urban landscape and the urban planning of Lagos. So this is a good example because it shows how projects are really far-reaching over the long term. It's not just that we come, provide an equipment or an infrastructure, and then go and leave you just with the debt. No, it goes well beyond this. And we have also businesses which are very compliant in terms of environment, labor, or other standards.
Ambassador, we understand the point that the European Union's interests in Nigeria are genuine and, exploring areas that will enhance the well-being of the people. What I'm talking about is the equal nature of this partnership. What are the opportunities for Nigeria in the European Union? Would the European Union be willing to open up more markets to Nigeria for agricultural produce, for the new emerging competence in energy production and diversification that Nigeria has with the exportation of petroleum products, aviation fuel to Europe? Will there be a reduction of tariffs potentially for Nigerian businesses to further strengthen the balance of trade in favor of Nigeria? That's what I'm talking about, to prove that indeed this relationship is one based on equal partnership.
Well, tariffs are already at zero on almost all products from Africa into Europe. Some partners have done the same recently, but in Europe we've done this many years ago already. And we have to remind that the EU is the first export destination of Nigeria, including of non-oil and gas products. And Nigeria has a trade surplus of about $10 billion every year with the EU. So we are already on a very solid basis, but we want to help Nigeria also export more and diversify its exports. And this is also what our projects are about. For instance, in climate smart agriculture, we are trying to support value chains like tomatoes, ginger, cocoa. And cocoa is already an important source of export toward the EU. But the cocoa sector needs to adjust to the new EU deforestation regulation, which will enter into force next year. And our support is in particular to help them be fit for the implementation of this regulation in 2027. So, and the same for industry, we can perfectly imagine also, if the conditions are met in terms of infrastructure and price, that Nigeria can export also industrial products to the EU in the future. That's very much what we are aiming at.
Yeah, the numbers clearly shows there's a relationship, depending on how you're looking at it in terms of import and export. So we're talking about between maybe $20 to $30 billion in terms of the exchange of trade between EU and Nigeria. So let's talk about, I know that the 10th Nigeria-EU Business Forum is holding. I think that should be in a day. I think that should be tomorrow. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ambassador. But before we go there, let's talk about the Global Gateway Strategy as that major investment initiative. If you can expatiate on that, because I know it's going to be core in the conversation at that meeting.
The Global Gateway Strategy, in fact, is a new approach to our support. First, working together hand in hand with our member states and our development banks, the European Investment Bank, which has a growing portfolio in Nigeria, and the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, which has started recently operation in Nigeria and is going to inaugurate premises in Lagos very soon. So this is the first feature of this Global Gateway Strategy, what we call Team Europe work. And then we develop tailor-made and complex financial instruments with grants. We are implementing 730 million euros of grants in Nigeria between 2021 and 2027. Loans, I mentioned the EIB. Nigeria is our first largest country of operation in sub-Saharan Africa, 1.5 billion euros of loan portfolio, plus now EBRD coming. We blend loans and grants. We also provide guarantees and other complex financial instruments to really meet the needs of our partners. And then we partner with the private sector, and this is really a new feature in the EU action. Previously, we were rather staying away from the private sector. Nowadays, the contrary. We really try to partner, leverage investment, so we discuss very much with the private sector, in particular in Europe, but also their partners in Nigeria, to see which kind of projects we can support. To take an example, we are part of a bridge project, which is a very ambitious project by the federal government of Nigeria to roll out 90,000 kilometers of optic fiber across the country to enhance connectivity. And we are part of this through an EBRD loan, $100 million, through a grant from the EU, 22 million euros, and also through a private sector. Companies like Nokia or Ericsson, for instance, are also part of this as investors or as providers into this project, which is a public-private partnership. So it's a good example of what we are trying to do under the Global Gateway. And yes, we will have this week, actually it's Thursday, in Lagos, our EU-Nigeria Business Forum, which is a very important one because it is the first taking place under really this new environment, this new approach of a partnership with the Global Gateway now being rolled out almost at cruise speed in Nigeria. And of course, in this new geopolitical environment where both sides decided back in March when we had the EU-Nigeria ministerial meeting to enhance our partnership and bring it to another level, more strategic.
You mentioned it. As we're going to wind down, Ambassador, so it's taking place, I just checked it out, 25th of June. That to be 2 days from now. That's on Thursday. How significant is this? Because this is the 10th edition. So what are the milestones that will be measured that has happened in the last maybe 10 years? And what are the projections for maybe the next decade as we begin to wind down?
Well, I think this one will be very different from the 9 previous editions because of this new environment I was just describing. And what we want through this business forum is really to be hands-on, to be very pragmatic, not grand speeches, but showcasing the opportunities under the Global Gateway, in particular for access to funding, and also the opportunities of Nigeria as a place for investment, because we need also to change the mindset of European companies and to convince them to come to Nigeria. Those who are here are facing challenges, but they are satisfied with their returns. And we also want to identify and address the bottlenecks and barriers to investment and try to identify solutions to this. And finally, of course, develop partnerships between companies and with the financial institutions, the governments. There will be many sessions of B2B, B2G, B2F, and matchmaking opportunities for the participants. So it's just 1 day, very intense. And what we would like to see are new flagship projects being identified in the next years under the Global Gateway strategy, and also new partnerships, new deals that partners can strike for more investment into Nigeria, more exports also to the EU, and more jobs and opportunities created here. In terms of figures, we don't have a specific target. I think it will also depend on the context, the global evolution of the economy, also the regional context. But we think that we can do much more than what we are doing right now. If you compare the figures of Nigeria with figures of other emerging economies. You know, I was posted in Mexico before coming here, and there is a wide gap, like 1 to 7, between the figures that we have in Mexico and the ones we have in Nigeria. You know? And they are rather comparable countries.
And it would have been very, very apt to follow up on that. And of course, your earlier thoughts about the mindset of European businesses about Nigeria and the challenges that European businesses currently have in Nigeria. That would have been interesting feedback, you know, for Nigeria and the government. But we'll have to secure your commitment to have you back, especially to also review the EU-Nigeria Business Forum that is coming up shortly. We must thank you very much, Ambassador, for coming through. Ambassador Gautier Mignon is the EU Ambassador to Nigeria and ECOWAS. Thank you for your time on the program.
Thanks to you. Have a nice day.
And there's more to come on national security and, of course, human rights. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. Nigeria has been plagued with loads of national issues, one of which at the top of it is national insecurity. For over 10, 15 years, we've been battling with one form of terrorism, banditry, kidnapping. You can go on and on. But there's a couple of parts to that conversation, and that has to do with everybody's responsibility. There is the government, whose primary responsibility should be the security and welfare of the people. That is their job. Then there are the security agencies. That's another layer. Those who are the men on the ground to do the job. Then there's you and I, who have a responsibility to collectively come together as a force. So that's why they say security is everybody's business. So we're going to explore all of these angles today on the program. Bringing our guest, Mr. Seyi Adetayo, is a security and intelligence expert. Today he's wearing a jacket. I've never seen him on a jacket. Mr. Seyi, good morning and welcome to the program.
Yeah, good to see you today.
Let's begin with an evaluation. No, we have one that is hitting our consciences and our hearts seriously right now, which is the Orire incident in Ogbomoso area of Oyo State. We know things are being done, but Nigerians are just eagerly waiting for those children to be released. We can go on and all of this. But I want to also look at the issue of national security from a very holistic point of view. Because for those of us who are in the media, we will always hold government to account. That's our work. But there's a holistic point of view that has to do with government, security agencies, and the people. What's your first interpretation of that perspective?
Okay, also thank you. You see, the most important thing here is that are we doing enough as people to support our armed forces, our government in this fight? And our political leaders, are they also doing enough to rally the people to join them? The situation, if you remember, many years back, we've had this conversation before, and I insisted that the problems we're having is not a problem that can go away in 4 months, 3 months, or 6 months. So giving Army Chief order clear this in 4 months, that we need to actually create a narrative, the real narrative, that this is going to be with us for a long time. But we need everyone to join hands to help us to eradicate this. So if we have the understanding that this is not something that can be wished away, or that can be just put soldiers there and it will just be swept away, then we will all be able to come together. And you know, we've seen of recent the former head of state, you know, coming up to also making statements about the need for us to come together as a people, not a time when we need to politicize insecurity in this country. And if you look at countries like United States and another country, you see the way, when they are faced with things like this, it is not a time to play politics. It's a time for everyone, because the problem would not disappear. And you don't know who's going to be the next victim. And I'll give you an example. The pipeline for insurgency and terrorism is very strong. And latest reports indicate that as much as 500,000 naira is being used to recruit. So you can imagine somebody that is in a village that can hardly eat, and they'll be able to get 500,000 naira. You know the number of heads of a calf, that is baby cattle, that he can buy, give to his wife, and enter the forest to be a bandit. And how much can such a person earn if he joins the Nigerian military to fight as a soldier? The recruitment pipeline is there. And for you to be able to eradicate that, it's not something that can be done in 2 months or 6 months. It's a long-time plan. The government has to put social infrastructure in place to help to reduce that, that attraction that can make young people to be entering the forest. You see, when we speak against our military, we are demoralizing the military. The number of soldiers that are dying. I was speaking to some people last week. I said, the number of insurgents, bandits that has been killed are more than 10 times the number of the Nigerian military, as in the total strength of our armed forces. And yet these people are increasing. So this speaks to where these people are coming from, how these people are being recruited. And it's not something that happened 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or 20 years ago. These are things we've done over the years, for more than 50 years, to try to create a baseline upon which things like this can grow. And it will take, collective effort as a people, as a nation, for us to tackle this as a whole. So this is not a time for us to, politicize or play lip service or believe that, it is a function of the military. Every one of us will have to be involved.
So before my colleague comes in, as you said it now, something hits my mind. And for me, I don't think the people have a problem supporting government. I think sometimes it's the responsibility of government that wanes the passion of the people to support them, with greatest respect, using that word, responsibility. The military has shown capacity. When I mean, because we always talk about what they did with ECOMOG, or what they did all these places. So how, if as a security expert and intelligence person, where I'm going to with my question is, if the people are willing to support the government, but the government has to show cause why they should support them, what do you think the government can do differently? Because the military are just executioners of this whole narrative as far as the issue of national security is concerned. Theirs is they do what they are supposed to do. Of course, we cannot draw away the issue of sabotage and all of that in between. That's another conversation for another day, if you get my drift.
Who are the victims? The people. Government don't have to show or over demonstrate the need for it. And I'll give you an example. I was in Anambra State at the peak of robbery and criminality in Anambra State, such that when they were uprooted from Niger Delta, they moved to areas like Delta State, Asaba, and they will come from Asaba to come and rob banks in Oka. And when they are coming, they will stop at SARS Akuzu, open fire there, and put maybe 2 vehicles there to ensure that there is no reinforcement from SARS to Oka to save the banks. And what did the people do? The President Generals called the town union meeting, and they arranged among themselves security vigilantes in the community, and they started procuring weapons. When the government saw that the people are determined to protect themselves, then I remember that the commissioner of police, it was then the deputy commissioner of police, Ops, DC Bello. It later became the commissioner of police, Bello. He's retired now. Was the commissioner of police at that time. And he told the government, with the director of DSS, I said, you know what, the way things are right now, we need to work with the people to stem this tide. And that was what was done in Anambra State at that time. They were brought together to work under the Nigerian police. And all the weapons that were procured by the town unions were all registered by the police, and they gave them instruction, the guidelines on how to operate. That was how armed robbery, kidnapping was brought down. You see, we need to understand. And you see, I think about a year and a half ago, the current DGSS says, during one of his speeches, called for the need for communities to be armed. And I think this still speaks to, this that has happened. I remember there was a time in Djibouti as well when I think it was during Marwa, when Marwa was Operation what is it called, that was popular in Lagos in those days, you know,
Operation Sweep.
Swept armed robbers out of Lagos. They moved to the Djibouti axis. They were operating in Djibouti, and the Djibouti people came up to say no, enough is enough. They rally around and they put an end to it. The government had no choice than to support them. So what we're saying right now is that we need to put policy in place. We need to actually, you know, restructure. We need to understand the fact right now that the people must be involved, and the people too should be ready, because one, the soldiers that are going to go inside this forest, we're talking about issue around environmental factors and geography factors here. The people in the community know their environment very well. Talking about this forest, there are people that have been hunting in that same forest. They have been farming inside that same forest before the bandits came. They understand all the networks of it. So we need these people. Look at Borno State, for example. You cannot wish away or rubbish the involvement of the CJTF, civilian JTF, in the fight against insurgency there. They saw the need that there's no how we can fight this without involving the people. And the people were willing. The state government, you know, at that time was willing to support. And so state government have been supporting it. So Oyo state government cannot say that they are not aware of the Orire issue before it happened. There was intelligence from the DSS about that particular incident before it happened. So
really?
Yes, that was intelligence. And I can tell you that because I'm close to people that were involved. Now you can fact check this. And the state government did not deny the fact that was intelligence, okay, you know, in that regard. So the thing here is that we need to actually bring the people into this part. This is not about individual forming a security network. No. This is about calling for people, calling for volunteers. There are ballets and community chiefs, kings in various communities that have their own local security structure. Absorb them. Let them give you all the support. They will be ready. Provide vehicles for them. They will enter this forest. They will understand this forest. They know the route in all this forest. And they can help you to draw all the maps so that our military can be able to achieve. See, we have achieved a lot, but we are not seeing the kind of results that we want. Not because we are not achieving, but because currently the way things are, we are being overwhelmed. I started by telling us, you know, about the issue of the pipeline, the recruitment network.
And that's what I want to follow up on. You've talked a lot about a number of things, and I'm spoiled for choice, but I want to explore two particular aspects. That pipeline, you talked about the recruitment price being 500,000 naira. You've also talked about the need for government to draw the people in with the provision of social infrastructure. I wonder if we're seeing that. And the next point is about, this is at the risk of, you know, giving the population perpetrating insurgency and banditry and ethnic coloration. I say this because in the President's Democracy Day speech, he had said that we shouldn't, you know, profile any particular ethnic group. But if we see the response of the people in the Southwest against insecurity, in protests, in relentless calls and advocacy for the government to do something about it, and we see that as being evidently lacking in the North, are we addressing the problem the way it ought to be addressed? Don't you see a significant gap in that particular space?
We might think that it is lacking, but no, that's not the case. We may not be seeing the kind of results because the volume of the decadence in that area is such that it will take a lot for actions to show the kind of effect it will show, like in the Southeast, in the South-South, and in the Southwest. I know, for example, in Katsina and Zamfara, there are groups like communities, vigilantes, you know, that are going after this. And at some point, it was ethnicized, that it was as if they are going after, you know, a particular tribe. You see, the issue is that let us first of all agree on the fact that the community has to be involved. We have to involve the community. We have to create a structure where they can participate. Then we will now put up policies and guidelines to ensure that while we are doing this, remember, these same people we are talking about, they are from communities. When you involve the communities, they know who among them
But if you
their own sons.
if you even came further down the southwest, if a particular crime is perpetrated in a community, either it's in the south or it's in the southeast or it's in the southwest, a particular tribe is mentioned as being responsible. In the latest video where we saw the Yoruba Nation activists going to the forest, he said that their people were the ones farming this particular area in the forest, but they have now been overrun by cattle herders. So are we addressing the problem, or we're being boxed into a corner with that term, stop ethnic profiling?
You see, for me, I think that we should not lose focus. By the time we start looking at it from ethnic coloration, we will not get the kind of support that we want. Crime is crime. Criminality is criminality. It knows no ethnic, it knows no race, it knows no language. We must treat every criminal as criminals. We've seen cases where, people say, oh, it is Fulani that did this, and later after they are arrested, we saw that it's our own people. And that's something I do tell people, and that's about that 90% of the cattle you see in the southwest, in the southeast, are owned by southwesterners and southeasterners, even though they are being reared by particular people.
Is that backed by data?
Yes, owned by our own people.
I'd like to see that
it's a
data.
business. It's a business that is going on in my community. They came to meet me. Yeah, I mean, there's a particular. I really don't want to go into that. They might be the one rearing it, but the question is, who owns those cattle? How much are they paying them? When they lose a cattle, what is the repercussion? Yeah. Do they lose what they have worked for a particular year? There are a lot of issues involved in this that we need to interrogate. That's why I said we need to bring the people in before we begin to say, oh, we are trying to ethnicize a particular issue. Let us go deeper into this root cause. Who are really the owners of this cattle as well? What is their own involvement in pushing people that are handling the cattle, to account for their own cattle? But that is another issue. The problem here the issue is that let everybody rise up.
Yes, I want
to support our military, our security forces.
And I want to double down on that effort to support it. And I want us to stay there, because there's something you said that was quite striking. When I posed my first question, you said, who is affected the most? And I could agree that the people are affected the most. So, but the challenge here is that if you let things in the hand of the people and don't manage that people be involved carefully, you find yourself with the kind of xenophobic mess that is going on in South Africa. People turning against foreigners, and this may be building us. So that's why I was pushing it on. The military, for instance, the only challenge that may be with them, I mean the security agencies, may be the issue of funding and sabotage, because their job is just to get the job done. So help us, make us understand how we can hold the political class to a significant account, because now we're going to involve the judiciary in terms of expediting action on people that are criminals in the system, the people that are still in our commonwealth, that are not allowing these things to get to the people in terms of economic empowerment that leads people to this pipeline you talked about. So talk to us about that, because I'm almost arguing with you again that it's not difficult for the people to have a buy-in. So I'll give you an example. I don't think the average Nigerian has a problem paying for light, but he has a problem paying for light he's not seeing. I don't know whether you get my drift.
I do. So, like I said, one of the first things that Tosin Ajayi, the current DGS, said was the people should be harmed to do this. So which means that we're supposed to harm the people, the government. So there's need for, this collective agreement at the level of the political leadership, both the Nigerian Army, the office of the NSA, to agree with that position that we need to involve. Yes, it has its own downside, I know. But right now, we need to deal with this issue. It's taking too long, and people are getting very, very, very concerned right now. See, two things. One, we need to change the narrative. We need to get the people involved. And then we need to make, politicians not to politicize.
That's the question I was trying to
these issues. It's a time that it's not when something happens, because at every point in time that we do that, we are hurting the soldiers. We need to be talking about the successes, and that's what you see will happen in America. We need to talk about more about, because just like you are giving oxygen to banditry, to terrorism. If you're amplifying these bad things that they are doing. But if you are talking more about the successes of our armed forces, the good things that our own strength and the achievement. Okay, for example, the particular issues in Kogi. The guy was eliminated. It took the effort of both security agencies and the community, the vigilantes, to get this done. And within 24, hours after that, his sister and mother that were discovered to be the one, supporting and enabling him to do. They were arrested. They were taken to court. They got 40 years jail term. Within a very short period, judiciary was right there to dispense justice immediately. And result, we need to talk about this. People need to be encouraged that yes, people have been arrested, this has been killed, those who are supporting it, this is what they got. So you see, terrorism has its own pipeline, its own value chain rather. There are those who are providing logistics, providing food, providing enablement, helping to serve as courier. So many of them believe that they are just doing business. We need to let them understand that there are people who have done what you did, they end up in jail. There's a particular one that got death sentence. And then also to encourage our governors. Don't contest for governorship if you cannot sign execution order. Don't contest for governor. Governorship is not ceremony. You must be ready to take that responsibility. That's why, I respect Governor Shiomole. There was a lot of hues and cries when he signed those things. We need to demonstrate, and see, this is the downside to it. Someone committed murder or kidnapping and was sentenced to death, capital punishment, and didn't do anything. Tomorrow there is a jailbreak. These are the first set of people that will encourage jailbreak, and they are back to the society. The people who supported security agencies leading to the arrest will be the first people that they will target. So the governors also need to do something.
It's going to be an ongoing conversation to get the full buy-in of the people, but you've got to keep mainstreaming it. As we said, the security is the responsibility of everyone. Government, people, the security agencies, I call them the executioners in that sense. I mean, the people who execute the policies and programs and the architectural, security architecture of the government. So a lot of culture is also in between all of them. Thank you so much, Mr. Sheyi. We wish we had the luxury of time. We're waiting for you. Sheyi Adetayo is a security and intelligence expert.
Dr. Sheyi Adetayo.
Oh, doctor. Okay. Congratulations.
That's a long time ago. I'm surprised you.
Thank you for coming on the program. We're going to have you back and expand the conversation even further so we can potpourri on all the aspects. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, we'll take a break, and when we come back, we're still talking security, but this time has to do with gender-based violence. When it comes to the violence that targets women, they are the vulnerables and the children. So let's talk about it in just a moment. Stay with us.
Welcome back. And from the challenge of insecurity, we move to human rights. And they're related, if you ask me. They say gender rights are human rights, and the inability to tackle one, also risks lack of development on many fronts. And so let's, review our progress in the fight against sexual and gender-based violence. And joining us on the program this morning is Ololade Ajayi. She's a founder, Doors Cares Foundation, and she's right here in our Lagos studio. Good morning, Lolade. How are you doing today?
Good morning. I'm so great. I'm grateful to be here.
Yes, indeed, and we're glad to have you. And just a few days ago, Nigeria joined the rest of the world to celebrate the International Day for the Elimination of Sexual Violence, and the minister has been speaking. But broadly speaking now, what are your observations, both at the state level and at the national level, about the efforts deployed to tackling sexual and gender-based violence?
I would say that the Nigerian government fares averagely in tackling that, because we have laws that addresses this, especially the VAP Act that's been adopted in at least 35 states and the FCT. But then the implementation of these laws, sometimes there are challenges with implementation of these laws, and also challenges with prosecution that eventually leads to sentencing. I think the challenges mostly comes from the police stations, because these are the ones that will determine if this case, gets prosecuted, gets into a court of law eventually. And the other challenge that we'll have is data tracking. We do not have a GBV board, an SGBV dashboard that tracks the prevalence of this crime in Nigeria. So we just see cases, but like you said, they marked the International Day of women who were killed in sexual violence during conflicts. Many of the cases that we've been discussing, in kidnapping, in insecurity and all that, many of these cases, when it happens to women, happens because sometimes these women refuse to be raped, and so they get killed. And so in most of these cases, they're just tagged insecurity. But, there are also some gender dynamics, even in insecurity. So I think we need to look holistically into that as well.
So let's talk about what I feel will move the needle. Okay. And that has to do with legislation. I saw it as part of the highlights of what you're doing, besides dedicated response and the action that is required.
Yeah.
Where is the legislation at the moment that you, in your view, from your work, that is not satisfactory? And where should it be that will give us a kind of result that we need to deter people from hurting our girls and our women?
Okay, thank you very much. So, first of all, my viewpoint is that we need, I would say we need new laws, especially laws on femicide. Now, femicide is the gender-related killing of a woman or girl, mostly because of her gender, usually by an intimate partner, by a relative or close acquaintance. There is no mention of femicide in any Nigerian law, in the criminal code, in the VAP laws. So we need specific mention. I remember that we drafted a bill and submitted it. We drafted a bill on femicide and submitted even before the Lagos State House of Assembly and also before the National Assembly. And the Lagos State House of Assembly wrote back to us to say, oh, there are laws, on domestic violence in Lagos State and also in the criminal code, there's laws on murder. But we said that was not enough because if you classify, the laws on murder, if you look at it, if you say, for instance, 5,000 people are killed in Nigeria in a year, and that's homicide, in general. But then from our data, we have discovered that a woman or girl is killed every 49 hours in an act of femicide in Nigeria. This data on homicide does not specifically let us know about this gender
one in
dynamic.
Every 2 days.
Yes.
And that's scary.
And that's scary because they are killed in places whereby these women are supposed to be protected, whereby these women should feel safe at home. Home is one of the most dangerous places for a Nigerian woman, and this should not be so. We want, the conversations reviewed.
Can you say that again?
Home is one of the most dangerous places for Nigerian women and girls.
Oh.
Yes. From our data board, we see that for the highest number of femicide are committed by husbands, intimate partner, ex-husbands, boyfriends, intimate partners, basically, and the prevalence of this crime is quite alarming because, and it keeps occurring because prevention measures are not enough, and there's also no specific legislation on this. So we want there to be specific legislation on femicide. For instance, we've tracked hotspot zones. Hotspot zones are states where these crises keep occurring and with repeated patterns. For instance, we can see in the last 1 month, we've tracked 3 nurses who were killed in their homes.
To which part of the country?
One was in Imo State, Wendy Achumba, the nurse who was raped at home and killed. Also, another one is that 2 were in Anambra State. But we've also seen the patterns here in Lagos State as well. In fact, Lagos State is one of the highest states. It's the highest right now from our dashboard, from our data. It has the highest occurrence of femicide in Nigeria. We've tracked about 350 cases.
Why do you think that is? Lagos, I think Lagos had some good laws when it comes to, because I follow up a couple of things when it comes to issue of children and women. I was rating Lagos pretty high in terms of management of this, so it's surprising to see this number from Lagos.
Yes, so that might either be due to the fact that there's more reporting of this crime in Lagos State. So in many cases where this crime occurs, they do not report it. And there is no, and that's one of the things that we're advocating for in the femicide.
So it could be more in those other states that are not reflecting on your dashboard, but because Lagos has a robust intervention and legislation and mechanism.
Not reporting.
Reporting.
Yes. Because these cases get flagged on social media, get flagged, and people are more aware that they should report this case, they should speak up, and they might, receive help.
But you disagree with that of mechanism for intervention?
Yes, I do disagree with it.
I was going to quote, the Domestic Violence and Sexual Response Unit, DSVRT, which provides intervention. But since you disagree, I'm more interested in your advocacy for a femicide law. There is a culpable homicide law. And you talked earlier on that, the challenges are with the institution that should respond, which is the police stations. If we looked at the gender units in these stations and how trained and active they are in responding, maybe that's where the problem is. Shouldn't that be where your advocacy should lie, instead of in the area of advocating for a legislation on femicide?
Okay, so it doesn't stop at just legislation, but legislation helps to, when this law is codified. For instance, a woman who is going through domestic violence, I still had the case yesterday, and the police returned her home. They had some form of mediation, and she vehemently refused to go, but they tried to mediate and asked her to go back home. And I said, what's going to happen? You just made the man sign an undertaking, and because the police was not, I don't know, maybe not, I didn't want to say not trained, maybe not sensitive enough, or for some reason decided to take that action. If it was codified in the law that when this happens, this is going to happen, this is a red flag of femicide. When this occurs, for instance, when we go to communities to talk about the red flags of femicide, for instance, if domestic violence happens and there's strangulation, it's likely to kill you, or there's burning of things, it's likely to burn you up. And this is a pattern that we have studied that eventually resulted in this. And so we say these officers should have been, trained to say, when this occurs, this is not what you should, this is what you should do. And that eventually it results in, it's a case of state failure in protecting these women and girls. We have seen people who have been returned into the environment after, arrest and mediation, because they don't strengthen that further by going to prosecute those cases. Yes, I mean, the DSVA very wonderfully, they try with supporting survivors of abuse, but oftentimes and most, because these red flags are not recognized by these officers, if their femicide is actually classified, it defines what the red flags are, it defines what constitutes attempted femicide, not just domestic violence. And we don't see it as a private case, we see it as a public issue, a public health issue, a public policy issues, and the police are going to know that they cannot, this is not a crime that you should settle, this is not a crime that you should let the survivor return to that environment.
You do make a strong argument, and we hope that this platform, helps to enhance that argument and get it to boardrooms where it should be amplified, and perhaps you get that legislation. But more importantly, the behavioral change is needed at all levels, state institutions, and of course, in the society as well.
Yes.
Great work you're doing, and we must thank you very much. Olalade Ajayi is a founder, Doors Cares Foundation. Thank you for coming through on this one.
Thank you.
And that's how it's been on today's show. Thank you so much for being there. We'll be back again tomorrow for the midweek edition. Sunrise Daily is up next. I am Bukola Koka.
And I'm Jeffrey Uzama. Bye-bye.